Good morning, everybody, and welcome to RAREfest 2020. We are really delighted to have you all join us from all across the world. 2 years ago, we started RAREfest here in Cambridge at the Guildhall, and it was fantastic to see so many people engaging and learning about rare disease and us being able to bring together all the people. This year being 2020, obviously we've had to do things differently. So we're here virtually, and we're hoping that actually this means that lots more people will be able to join us for RAREfest. RAREfest is here to celebrate rare disease, to bring rare disease to the public's attention, but in particular to allow you to get to know each other, to mingle, to exchange ideas, and hopefully to use all that to improve the lives of people with rare disease. CRDN, or the Cambridge Rare Diseases Network, our charity, and we've been working really hard to bring together different stakeholders. So that is to bring together patients and families with scientists, doctors, and also with industry, because we strongly believe that through collaboration, we can improve the lives of people with rare disease. The first talk is talking about something that many of you will know a lot about. It is about finding the journey and to a rare disease diagnosis and the impact that that can have on families. I hope you enjoy the talk.
Oh my God, she's my little light, you know? Whenever it's happening, she's my little light in the tumor. This is who is she? She's a happy, energetic child. There's no more words. She's Maida. And on the 26th of May, it was the last day with that cry. It was the last day I felt like a mother. That day I became a researcher. That day I became everything else. I knew that I'm the only person who can try to help my daughter to find the answers and help her, because I was in the point of the black hole. I didn't know where I am. I didn't know how we're supposed to proceed. I was just left on my own. Nothing confirmed, just a big question mark. It's like golden ticket. 8 years of being lonely, scared, 8 years of not knowing, 8 years of wondering what's gonna be tomorrow. At some stage I stopped thinking what's gonna be tomorrow because I was afraid to think. So that diagnosis gave me a hope, gave me a right to be a mom, gave me this marginal of worrying about the little things, feeling like I'm forgetting for a short time periods, forgetting that I need to think about disease because I already knew what we've got.
You feel like, I remember feeling, you know, that feeling when your legs, you can't feel your legs anymore, and you just think back and you feel like sorry, your world is collapsing. And then you have lots and lots of questions that you want them to answer, and at the same time you don't want to hear the answers.
Having the name of the syndrome and a very clear list of symptoms, of challenges, has been huge for us. And to have the diagnosis 2 weeks after birth, while we didn't appreciate it at the time, we certainly do now. And even within Wolf Herschel, lots of families don't have that advantage. They have to wait considerably longer. So now we are incredibly grateful to have that. It really does make the world of difference, and will do for the rest of Julia's life.
Yeah, I guess when we got the diagnosis, yeah, our journey began, and it began with understanding Iggy more. It began with a lot of appointments, specialists. Our diaries are still full of caring for Iggy's needs, which are so complex, and it's a guessing game basically on what he needs. So that journey of completely accepting and letting go that your life will never be normal with him, and accepting that that's okay, and that we're going to be happy, and that he's clearly happy. And I think it began the process of accepting what that means.
He's the most outgoing person, friendliest person ever, and if that's a result of his condition, then that's an amazing part of it as well. Like, there's the downsides, but he has such a vibrant, bubbly personality, and instantly makes friends with so many people that I think it's just the most amazing thing.
So you will have just seen a film that I'm extraordinarily proud to have had even a small part in being involved with. And the journey of hope is something that I think for the four of us is really, really important, and is something that has been very much a part of our journey for the last year. So a year ago, the journey of hope was just an idea. And over a couple of months, the end of last year, that idea developed, and we formed, I guess, a small family in a way, which I would like to introduce you to here on this webinar. So Kerry is with us. Kerry is the filmmaker, and some of you will know Kerry from her role with Same But Different, an extraordinary arts-based charity that seeks to raise the profile of and raise awareness around rare disease through the arts, creative arts. And I'm really, really pleased to introduce Maja, who is the mother of Ida, who you will have just seen in the film, and Tom, who is the father of Julia, who you will have also just seen on the film. So what we want to do over the next half hour or so is just have a little bit of a fireside chat. You'll see we've got our lights on. It's later in the day for us right at the moment, and we want to just have a little bit of a conversation. It's a lovely chance for us to get together and to talk about the last year and to talk about what the Journey of Hope has meant to us, how we got involved in it, and why we think telling our stories, our rare stories, are important. So we're going to start a little bit with kind of breaking down what happened in terms of how we made the film, why we made the film, some of the issues that we think are important, how it felt making the film, and then thinking through, okay, what's been the impact of the Journey of Hope for us all over the last year. So I'm going to start by asking a few questions, really, and we'll get different answers, I think, from Kerry, from Maja, from Tom. But, you know, obviously, maybe Kerry, it would be great to start with you a little bit about where did the idea come from, and you know, how did it start?
Oh, how did it start? It seems like such a long time ago now. I mean, you know, initially, Shirlene and myself met at a Find a Cure event, and we had that connection straight from the beginning. I think we had many laughs during that day. And whilst we'd never, you know, met each other before, and I knew very little about Illumina and very little about what the organisation did, we knew quite quickly that at some point we wanted to do some work together, because, you know, we had so many shared ideas and passions for the rare disease side of things. And so, do you know what? I can't even remember the exact start of the conversation. I remember we were talking about rare diseases and the families that you'd met through your work and the families that we'd met, and my own experiences with having a child with a rare disease as well. And our diagnostic journey was very different, because we couldn't go down a genetic route, because, you know, it's not that sort of condition that has any research into it. But when we were talking about, you know, what actually a diagnosis gives to you, and I can remember to the second, I can even remember what the room looks like where we were given a diagnosis about Isaac, and I know the conversation, and I know the words that we used and all of that, and it was all quite horrendous. And the other families that we've met through our work, you know, the other families say exactly the same thing, that they can remember their diagnosis and, you know, the language that was used and everything else. And so we knew it was something that was really important, and it was really important to capture that moment in time. And whilst as horrific as it was when we were given our diagnosis about Isaac, I also knew that it was something that actually made a massive difference to us. And so I think our discussions were very much around, what does that diagnosis give you? And that's what started us off with this whole idea of, you know, it's like a gift in a way, a gift that you don't necessarily want if you have, you know, nobody wants to get a rare disease diagnosis, but it is a gift because it gives you a starting point or whatever. And very early on, when we were trying to come up with some creative concepts, and we were having quite a few discussions backwards and forwards, weren't we, Shirlene?
Yeah.
And especially around the concept and how it would develop. And the first thing, and I think it's probably a good opportunity to get Maja involved in this, is the first thing that she showed me was the video that Maja had done about her daughter and the diagnosis. And we both looked at it, and she sent it to me, and my first thought was, no. And it wasn't because it was bad, because it was exceptional, but it meant that I was going to have to get on a plane and go to Poland, and that was something I never wanted to do, because I don't really like flying particularly. But once I saw that film, that was the starting point, because we knew the story, and I say story, but, you know, it's your experience, and I knew that experience that Maja had, and that she was so eloquent at expressing it, she was the starting point. And I think she, you know, I hope you might be saying she, but she gave us that inspiration as to how the film could develop. And so, yeah, from my perspective, that was the beginning point, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if you know that story, Maja, but I don't know if you remember, you sent me a little clip of you talking about the impact of a diagnosis, and I shared it with Kerry, very much trying to push, saying we're going to need to do this and we're going to need to go to Poland. But what about for you? You know, what was it like, I guess, you know, we'd talked about whether we could get your story out there at some point. And then when we first talked about doing this, you know, what did it feel like for you? What was important for you in terms of taking part?
First of all, I believe it was the first time when I had, it's hard to say, but when I had an audience that's going to listen what just happened to me, and sharing, saying it out loud, it's a one thing, because it was like a compact story that it took us 8 years. But saying it out loud, it was one thing. But saying it out loud, knowing that you understand me, and it might get the higher impact getting to people that going through the same, you can say, nightmare of not knowing. It was basically giving a wing to my wings just to try to fly, you know, after many years of being sat in the corner and just being scared, and the not knowing, it's not something I can bear, because it's heavier than your child that is sick, because it's heavy because you don't know what's going on. So taking a part in this project, taking a part in this movie gave me actually, it gave me a chance to be more free, I believe. It gave me a chance to meet people. That was the most amazing, to meet other people who can share not the same story, but it seemed to be like the same story. They all were longing to find out what's going on. And we found the place we can share it. We found the place that we do understand each other. We found the place that we can, we have a feeling, at least in my case, I had a feeling that I can say it out loud, so maybe somebody else will hear it. So maybe it might help somebody else. Because I believe through the years, when you are struggling, when you're looking for the answers, you might lose a hope. You might lose a hope that you will find the answer. You might lose a hope you will find other people that might help you. You might lose a hope if that matters. You might lose a hope if you have strength to fight for your child. If there will be any cure. So it all brings back to the point that taking a part in this project gave me this new hope, the hope of journey. It's a real, true hope. It gave me my voice back when I met Shirlene first time in Cambridge. Actually, it was the changing point. I cried my eyes out for the 3 days. For 8 years, 9 years, I haven't cried as much as I cried for this 3 days when I met other patients, ambassadors, that they could speak out loud about their emotions. Something so precious. It's so precious when you can share your story, because for many years you kept it all for yourself, from one medical to another medical professionals, and that was it. And spending time on research and, you know, getting to the point of diagnosis. That's what Carrie said. Diagnosis, it's a one particular day in our life that we will never forget. Because in our case, it was 8 years of waiting. And then it didn't take more than 5 minutes, to be honest. Just listening, what's the name of diagnosis, how it looks. They don't know anything about it. And basically, good luck. So we remember all the words, all the circumstances, the weather that day, how I felt like coming in, coming out, what I wanted to scream, how, you know, first research I've done online, it was just like being reborn with a new strength. And then getting to the journey of hope and making that film. From the Greek, I believe it's a catharsis. When you all good and bad emotions are coming through the same moment, the same day, and it has to be, it has to give an impact on the clearance on your soul. So that day was it for me.
Yeah.
It was the possibility of sharing, the possibility of knowing that when I'm talking about it, I had a feeling you know what I'm talking about. And that was amazing, because for many years I could speak speak for hours, and people were just staring at me and saying like, oh yeah.
And your story, because your story, Tom's, quite different, and how you came to the film as well is quite different in terms of deciding to take part. I think if I remember rightly, we madly sent out a tweet, Kerry did, and you responded, and you and I had a long phone call one afternoon, which I don't think I'll ever forget, and I've still got the notes that I made from that phone call. But yeah, I'm interested for you, because your experience too of getting a diagnosis is so almost opposite to Maja's, and thinking about then why, you know, how did you decide to take part? How did
Yeah, I suppose it was a proof that social media can be useful sometimes. So, and it just, I mean, it kind of feels like it was fate, because I think it arrived at a particular moment where it felt right to do things. And so at that point, Julia, my daughter, was 2. As you say, our journey with diagnosis was completely different. She was diagnosed at 2 weeks old, when she was still in neonatal intensive care in hospital. And yeah, when we first got that diagnosis, we certainly didn't recognize that we were fortunate at that point. It didn't feel very fortunate, but ever since then, it certainly has done. I mean, I think it's interesting saying earlier about, in terms of, you know, why people decide to speak and at what stage, and that it can, I think it's valuable to hear from people at very different stages of the kind of life course and their journey with someone with a rare disease, because I mean, we as a family haven't engaged very much with other families, either with the same diagnosis or with any other. I think there are pluses and minuses to that. However, there has been this kind of urge to talk and share about it. And I was just very conscious that when we got the diagnosis, I felt very alone, because I was too scared to speak to people who were too far down the journey. I was too scared to speak to people who have become these kind of very confident activists. I was scared to speak to someone who was too angry, you know, angry at the lack of support, because at that early stage, I wanted to convince myself that everything would be okay. I've become a bit more wise about things since then. I can now understand the anger. But I also didn't want to speak to someone who, you know, had perhaps got through 20, 30 years and had felt that they'd worked a lot of this out, because I was still at very early stages and felt that I was a bit too vulnerable to be guided by someone else. So whenever I tried to speak about our situation, I tried to walk delicately around it, because we're very lucky in some ways with Julia, we're unlucky in others. It would be wrong to be too positive and make people in a worse situation feel bad, and at the same time it's important not to be too negative. So that balance of kind of hope and realism, I think, is important. And it was in discussion with you and Kerry that I felt comfortable of what kind of film this was going to be, that it was going to be frank and honest and practical and helpful, but crucially for me, it was going to kind of show some of the beauty of this situation. You know, I want Julia's life to be a force for good and positive, and all about her, all the great things that she enjoys in life. And I think that's something that you both clearly recognised. And to be honest, if it's not going to be fun for Julia and me and my wife and my son doing this, then I probably don't have the emotional energy for it. So a bit of fun and love and colour into the mix of talking about some really hard stuff was what I was looking for, I suppose.
Yeah, I really like what you've said there, Tom, too, because, you know, behind the scenes, I think you know a little bit, but Kerry and I debated long and hard about so many aspects of the film. And the one thing that I think we connected so quickly on was that we didn't just want to tell another glossy story, that we wanted this to reflect reality, and that, you know, even though we've used the idea of a gift and we've settled on this, on the title of Journey of Hope, that, you know, let's be frank, that went backwards and forwards quite a lot too, didn't it, Kerry? You know, because of the term hope, you know, and there it's kind of like, that's such a loaded phrase. It's kind of, you know, how do we use this in that balanced, careful way that you've kind of reflected? And, you know, I think it's really nice for us to hear this aspect of it, because yeah, we don't want to mislead people. And, you know, certainly from my perspective, what I was concerned about was making sure that we showed the work that diagnosis did in its rawness. You know, that for some people, like for Maja, that was the, you know, it was an end point of a really, really long search. Whereas for you, it kind of came unexpectedly, and the journey has been after that. And again, for Sarah and Jordan and Iggy, you know, in a way that, so Sarah talks about in the film how the journey started, you know, with the diagnosis, and then our journey started. And yet it didn't start, of course, because they'd had a, you know, a whole period of investigations for a long time there, but it just, what work that diagnosis does. So yeah, I think that's really, really important to hear that. So in terms of telling your stories, then, you know, I think, you know, a lot of people think that stories have to be polished, you know, and we do a lot of work, don't we, in terms of thinking about what a story looks like, what a good story looks like. And I guess I just wondered, because, you know, obviously Kerry and I didn't do anything like that with either of you in terms of what we wanted to, you know, to be said. And I just wondered what it felt like for you guys on the day of filming, how, you know, how it felt to even think about, you know, I'm sure you were anxious about us arriving and anxious about what you were going to say in some ways. And how did that play out for you? Because, I mean, we have a perspective from the other side of the lens, obviously, but yeah. Tom?
You go first, Maja. You were the bravest of all.
Yeah, sure. No, definitely it was stressful. It was really stressful because it, as I mentioned before, it was like a compact story that I had to say out loud for the first time, because I had the possibility to chat a bit with other rare disease parents. But it was just very quickly and just short information about this and that, but never focusing on saying a compact story about my own daughter and about my own fight, and even in a short words, saying it and answering questions that Kerry asked me during the interview. It was kind of like putting stuff in my brain in the right places. I had this story about 9 drawers and one without the missing handle, and basically I felt like this, trying to get to this drawer that was in the middle and 8 around it for 8 years. So then at that day, it was like finding a handle to get to this drawer inside, and finding words to say my own story, what it has been, what it has done to me and my family, but what kind of impact finding the diagnosis of my daughter's disease, what it made. And it was, you know, saying out loud that I stopped feeling lonely. That particular day of doing the pictures for Journey of Hope, that actually I started believing in that. I was not alone anymore. I was not alone. It's because I said it out loud.
That's amazing.
It was very personal, very personal. Even though I thought about so many parents I've met through the whole journey, for so many years, and how lonely they are, what they cannot do, how many walls they meet on the way that they cannot go through. That particular day I felt a bit selfish, that I feel relieved. I really did feel relieved, but I also felt like if I'm gonna say it, it might help some others to believe even more. It's such a, there was so many feelings. I was looking at you, Shirlene, and you were this little fairy tale, what my daughter calls you. And Carrie, that was the boss of our shooting plan.
Surely not.
Yes, definitely is. But, the stress just before you enter my house disappeared after first half an hour of talking, because it was so natural. It was emotional, all kind of emotions, a bad and good one, and the stress. I think the stress after so many years hit me that day. So the little one is trying to come in. But that was it for me. Very personal, but with a huge, how do you say it? I got the feeling that I could do something more for others that day. Just because that moment I could say it to somebody else. That moment I felt, because I'm not feeling lonely anymore, I wish others could feel the same way. So, and Ida is laughing. I'm just gonna let her show.
Come in. Ida.
Okay.
And Tom, what was, I remember walking into your house that morning as well. And what was that like for you? Because I'd met Maja before we arrived at her house, but I'd never met you in person before. We'd talked, but not met in person. You let us in.
Yeah, I suppose I didn't give myself much time to think about it, because I think the tweet went out on the Friday morning, and you were in filming sort of a day or 2 days later. I can't remember. So it was very, very fast. So there wasn't really any time to. But I don't remember being too. I mean, I talk far too much, and my wife, Elaine, who you have seen on the film, is a very different character. She doesn't speak very much. So really for me, the great beauty of the film is her participation in it, because she very rarely speaks, or didn't do before the film, and I speak far too much. And we can come to that, but she said things on that film that neither my family or her family have ever heard before. So you, the audience, were the first to see that. But so I wasn't too. I mean, the phone call with you, Shirlene, it just made it very clear to me that this was going to go well, and it was what we needed as a family. But also, I already knew about Same But Different, and I was already kind of blown away by what Kerry was doing. Had read lots of the stories of the families, just thought the photographs were beautiful, and was kind of astonished that they didn't really feel like there was anything else out there like that. That there was a way of talking about these stories in a very honest and upsetting way, but also a completely beautiful, creative way, and that was the combination. So, and then sort of when you were sort of in the house asking, I mean, it was a very unusual. It was kind of like a form of therapy, which I think is what Maja's saying. But unlike a kind of professional therapy session, your therapists very rarely cry with you. And I hope you don't mind me saying, but, we would kind of come to a natural pause between questions where, something I'd said, or the way that Kerry was asking, it was bringing back memories for her, or of seeing families, before. So that made it very special. It wasn't like being interviewed by a journalist, although Kerry's got excellent journalistic skills in her own right. So it was a strange mixture of of being interviewed in a very professional journalistic way, but also having therapy in a very sort of personal way with someone who understood it because they'd gone through it with you, and you were both so sort of empathetic that no, it felt very easy. I felt very easy to trust you both, and I think when I look back on the film now, I think all three families were incredibly giving with the information, incredibly personal details. And obviously at that stage I hadn't seen what Maja had said, and you know, watching the film later, you know, when we were all together in London, was kind of, you know, blown away by the kind of emotional energy that I must have taken and the bravery to do that. And obviously we're only a much smaller part of the film, but no, I have huge imagination, huge respect for Maja and for Sarah for what they did in the film. So no, it wasn't as difficult, and you know, I think people should take that as a positive thing, that you know, sometimes these talking is not as difficult as people may fear, and I hope, you know, I'm here. My wife Elaine's looking after the kids. Part of the reason, apart from that I talk too much, that I've kind of thrust myself forward for these things, is that I have particular concern that we don't hear from dads, and I don't really understand why that is, and I'm keen to put my voice out there. My voice might be totally different to other people, to other dads, I have no idea, but here I am talking, trying to change that aspect of things, I suppose.
And thanks for that, Tom. I think, you know, that's for us, that's really important too, to have your voice in this whole conversation. And I think the eloquence you give to your experience, but also the you know, you give a lot of kind of raw emotion and honesty as well when you talk about your experience. But I was wondering then if I could take you forward. So you mentioned the night that we all watched the film together in London. So obviously the film got made, but the three of you, the three families, had never ever met before. And so unfortunately, the night that we all met together in London for the Rare Film Festival, so the first Rare Film Festival that this film was put up for, then it was the weather, there was a horrendous storm. Sarah barely got in from Amsterdam. I think in the end all her flights were cancelled, but we got her on a train. Maja, you got in. Tom came down obviously to London from Cambridge, and then Kerry, in the same but different team, ironically just could not get there from Wales. There was just no way to get there. So we met though for the first time in a hotel lobby all together, and had drinks before going to the film festival. And my personal, you probably don't know this, but I was as nervous as anything, because I remember thinking, you know, I think, you know, Kerry and I have held so much in terms of, I guess, an ethic about what we wanted this film to be. But then suddenly I felt this huge responsibility, in that we brought you three families together. You'd never met. Your stories were so completely different. And it was like, who were we to have brought your three stories together in some way and now put you in the same room together? And I remember being really, really nervous about you all meeting and what that was going to be like. But I think that night was pretty, well, it was pretty magic for lots of reasons for us. And I know that when the film flashed on the screen, it was I was moved to tears. You guys were sitting behind me, but what was that like for you then in that moment? Because I feel like something happened for the three of you at that point, but yeah, I don't know what your experience, how you'd word that.
Oh, I do remember. I had my partner at the time, and I remember seeing Tom's daughter, just a glimpse of it, and just, it was just second. I'm sorry. My tears ran out. I just couldn't stop it. I just wanted to hug both Tom and Sarah, and it was all just came back to me. All the comments, all what was important, all this single words that was that they said during the filming. It was so, I could relate to every single thing they've said during the film. even though the stories are different, but I could relate to every single one. If every single sentence had a meaning, and had a meaning to me, because at some stage I felt this way. So that moment when we actually we hold the hands. We hold the hands sitting behind in one row. We hold the hands, we looked at each other, then we couldn't look at each other because we all had tears in our eyes. So it was just like, it happened. We are here, but we are not alone. We have each other. We've met through this film. We met thanks to you, Shirlene, thanks to you, Carrie, thanks to this project. But we can see what we've been through on the big screen. It's amazing feeling, because it's again bittersweet. It happened to us. Now we can sit and watch it, not just be a part of it in present. We can just watch it as a film, but it's not a film, it's our real life. So we can make others to see it. So that's that was really, really emotional. I can still see this moment, you know?
Yeah.
I can still see the moment, and I can still feel hands, and you know, nearly looking for each other. Just, I wish we could hug at this moment, at this particular moment when we started. I wish we could hug each other. So
I think Maja's saving me lots of embarrassment with that recollection, because I think I got a hug from her and Sarah when they both noticed that I was kind of shaking and like in complete meltdown when I saw this kind of 20-foot high projection of Julia come on the screen. So they were like two mums either side of me looking up, which was amazing and much needed. But yeah, it's a very weird experience seeing Julia. Part of her syndrome means that she's very tiny for her age. So even though she was 2 at the time, she was more like the size of a sort of 4 or 5 months old. To see her, you know, kind of absolutely huge on the screen was amazing. And people watching the film won't know that the day after filming, Julia was in intensive care after having a huge seizure. She was already a little bit poorly that day. But we obviously didn't realize it was going to lead to that. And those memories were still stuck in my mind. We were going into winter, which is where she's sort of ill more often. So, you know, she appears so sort of happy and playing in the film, but I sort of, with hindsight now, knew what was coming. So that made it even more kind of emotional. So I think that's probably why I broke down watching it, seeing her sort of all happy and well, and then knew what was to come the day after. So it was an amazing and sort of surreal experience to watch the 3 stories come together, and I think the stories weave together really beautiful, and I think beautifully, and bounce off one another, and the differences complement one another and tell that story really well.
So we're going to have to wrap up soon, but I think I think what I'd like to ask now is, in summary, a little bit about what has the impact been on you in terms of telling your story in this way. And, you know, maybe if you, Tom and Maja, could say something, and then Kerry, would you just mind finishing from your perspective in terms of the impact of Journey of Hope from your perspective as well? So yeah, Tom, do you want to start in terms of what the impact's been for you since then? Because I know it's opened things in some ways, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helped. It took away some pressure, I suppose. I needed to speak then, and it then made me a bit more relaxed about choosing, you know, when and how I wanted to do things going forward. It reassured me that it felt good to do it, but it also, there was a sense of, okay, I've done that now. I can take some pressure off myself and just, you know, get used to enjoying life again, and enjoying Julia. And, you know, since then she's become much more active and has kept us more and more busy. You know, I've done a bit more writing about the experiences and use social media for it, and, you know, very much open again to opportunities to do it. But I think it just helped to get things clear in my mind about how I felt about things, and it created a useful platform to move on from that very traumatic first year and then and leap into a different phase, really. I'm just so glad that I was able to speak then, because I think if you'd interviewed me now, you would have lost some of that rawness, you would have lost some of the memories.
Yeah.
You know, I was coming out of the trauma of the diagnosis and seeing the light, but it was still very raw. Now we're in a completely different stage of confidence. So I'm glad that you captured me then, as difficult as it might be for me to look back then. You know, there are times now, you know, on the whole now, I just feel, you know, that life is great. If Julia's not in hospital, to me, she's just normal and perfect and happy, and our life is good, and I've got nothing to complain about. I did not feel like that when you came to film me. It was far too raw to have anywhere near that kind of confidence or hope. So I think it was a really important moment, and that's the thing that I'm most pleased about, because parents watching it at an early stage will identify with the upset and the rawness, but they will see that little flicker of hope and that little sense that there are things to look forward to. And they don't need to feel intimidated by me, because there's nothing to feel intimidated about at that stage. I was highly vulnerable. So that's how I feel. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. And you know, from me, thank you for all you've said and how you exposed yourself really that day. It means a lot. Maja, for you, there's been big changes this year.
Yeah, well, the biggest change, just wait a second. Ida. The biggest change is here.
Yay! Hello, little Leah.
And to be honest, what Tom said, he realized he could enjoy his life. I'm sorry, but she's really hungry. That he could see he could enjoy life, and there are moments that we're gonna be stressed, but there are moments we can still feel free to live as normal life as we're gonna decide it's gonna be normal. To be honest, this is the moment when I realized I can't be a mother again. I am a mother of Ida, and for many years, because of the lack of the diagnosis, I was afraid to get pregnant again. And then I realized no matter how much I'm gonna be scared of different things, the moment I've met all of you, I met you and I met other parents before of rare disease, just few months before I got pregnant. And I can't say it was just because of that, but I can say when I felt relieved, I believe it helped. And now we have a little girl. She's doing fine. I was laughing, I'm gonna be a granny with a little prom. But I can't say finding your place on earth, that was something I was lacking for many years. Finding your place on earth, finding place for my family, for Ida, for me, and finding our new little family, Tom and Sarah, and few more parents I've met on the way actually after doing the journey of hope. I can say led to this little miracle. I would like to show you her, but she's just eating at the moment. So that I can't find the bigger impact than that. I would say Tom said it right on point. You need to enjoy your life. You need to find a way to enjoy your life. There will be bad days, there will be good days. There are always ups and downs. And our life always going to be bittersweet. it might be rough, but it might be beautiful. And I have to say, at the moment, I'm the most happy person in the world.
Oh.
Ida has a little sister, and that's also something I never thought it's gonna happen. And that was something lacking. And I believe I'm not the only parent who has this problem, having a child with a rare disease and being afraid what's going to happen then, and if we're going to decide to have another child or not. But I got lucky. So my family, not just grown by meeting you, Carrie, and Shirlene, and Tom, and Sarah. My family has grown even more. And being brave enough also, being brave enough to take another chance to have a child. And that's what Tom said, trying to live life and believing that something good might happen, and trying to enjoy the way we can enjoy it.
Oh, thank you, Maja.
I cannot find the bigger impact on that.
That's amazing. Thank you. Carrie, how are you going to follow that?
I don't know if I can follow that. I can't follow that, can I? I think, I mean, you know, obviously every day we're lucky to meet other families who've had different experiences to do with rare disease and things, and to us, you know, and to me personally, I feel so privileged that people will share their stories with us and their experiences. And I think from the filming, apart from obviously the most important parts, which was to meet the different families, the part also that stands out for me involves just like a little plastic tray. And I think Shirlene will remember this point as well, when I'd never, I mean, you know, my background is in no way involved in science, as Shirlene knows, because most of the things go over my head. But when we went to the lab for the filming of the lab scene in the film, and, you know, Illumina kindly let us access the labs and to see the machinery and to see how they, you know, do all the testing. And to me, you know, aesthetically, I was thinking, how are we going to film a lab with computers in it? Because they're just boxes. And, you know, so my concern initially was, where will we get some color, and where's the lights, and where's the, you know, all of these silly things that I knew we needed to add some, you know, color and depth to. And then, I was shown one of the freezers, and, you know, it's a freezer. And in the freezer is these, you know, the panel, and she took out this panel and showed it me, and a panel is just like a little plastic thing. I don't know the terminology, but you can correct me, Shirlene, but it's like a panel. And is it 96?
92, well, the tray.
Yeah. The tray that has all of the different people's DNA in. And she showed it to me, and I absolutely ridiculously burst into tears. And I never expected that, because it was almost the culmination of everything that I've been doing for all of these years now, in that panel were 92 people's hopes and dreams. And I knew that the significance of that was incredible. And at that point, it really reinforced the importance of the message that we were given through these films. And, you know, and that's why we do what we do, to show the human aspect. But I think it's also important to combine that scientific and human, and showing how the importance of those communities working together hand in hand. And that's why I think that being able to share people's experiences and stories, and using the arts so that people who wouldn't normally look at this sort of thing, hopefully, you know, they do take notice. And so for me, whilst obviously the most important part was meeting the families, the secondary important part was seeing this, you know, DNA and the difference and the incredible work that everyone does at Illumina, in this case for the, you know, for the families, and what that means. So, you know, I'm grateful to have been involved in the project as well, because it really opened up my eyes to a world that I didn't really know before. So it's a thank you from me as well.
Well, and while we're at it, then I'll just add my thing. I don't think I'll ever forget that moment, Kerry. I wasn't expecting that from you at all, given you had said to me, "What, you know, where are the lights going to be? Where, you know, what's going to look pretty in the lab?" And yeah, that was obviously the first part of your journey around the lab in terms of what happens to samples. And yeah, that moment was very profound. But it brings everything home in terms of the why of all of this, that actually, you know, this is all about finding answers for people and the work that diagnosis does. So I want to say a huge thank you to the three of you for joining me today, and thanks for this conversation. It's a shame we're not doing it in person, but we will get to do that again soon, I'm sure. So yeah, thank you very much. And we'll finish there.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for listening and for joining me and watching this wonderful piece, The Journey of Hope. A very powerful and emotional journey, really, that was illustrated so beautifully by Kerry and all the parents involved. And I think a wonderful start to RAREfest 2020. For those of you who missed it at the beginning, RAREfest was started 2 years ago here in Cambridge at the Guildhall. And the aim of RAREfest really is to spread the word about rare disease, to get the public engaged, and also to bring people together. CRDN, or the Cambridge Rare Diseases Network, is a charity, and our aim is to improve the lives of people with rare disease through bringing people together. So with that in mind, we have a networking session starting. So in your emails, you will have got some Remo login details, and there you can join tables. You will also might be able to find Kerry around. You can talk to each other, exchange, you know, your feelings, your thoughts, your ideas about the future. On the other hand, if you've got families, in stream 2, we will be doing a Rare Diseases Mythbusters and quiz that starts at 10:45. And then back here on stream 1 at 11:15, we're going to have a session on artificial intelligence. I hope you all enjoyed the beginning and enjoy the rest of your day. Have fun.